I call on members. Order of the day number 1.
Financial Assistance for Live Organ Donors Bill, second reading.
Chris Bishop.
Speaker, I move that the Financial Assistance for Live Organ Donors Bill be now read a second time. Sir, 2 months ago I met Mr Robert O'Connor. Robert had driven over 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon to tell me his story and lend his support for this bill. Robert was a type 1 diabetic diagnosed at 6 months. And I say was deliberately, sir, because in March this year Robert received a life-changing call at 2 o'clock in the morning. There'd been an awful, fatal motor vehicle accident. The victim, fortunately, was an organ donor, and the donor was a match, and that match was destined for Robert. What's remarkable about Robert is that the bill we're debating tonight won't even directly affect him at all. His kidney came from a deceased donor. His donor will never be compensated for the sacrifice that they made. Yet he shares a trait with a lot of other organ donation campaigners, which is a passion and a commitment to helping others and a commitment to saving lives, which goes beyond self-interest. This is a trait shared by previous sponsors of this bill, and I'd like to acknowledge the Honourable Michael Woodhouse and also one of our former colleagues, Dr Cam Calder, for keeping this important piece of legislation in the members' ballot. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to take up this important cause and bring this bill to the House. Also, I'd like to acknowledge at this second reading debate, sir, the work of the Health Committee under Chair Simon O'Connor. The bill spent about a year at the Health Committee. They did an enormous amount of work on the bill, and I'd like to thank the work of the committee and also the officials who've enabled us to bring this bill back into the House in a substantially improved way. Also want to say thank you to my colleague Scott Simpson, who swapped out of financial expenditure with me on a week-by-week basis to allow me to spend a bit of time on the Health Committee and hear from the submitters. Can I acknowledge the many submitters and the health professionals, advocates and organ donation experts that I've met with over the past year. They're very strong advocates for improving our organ donation rates, and I hope that this bill, along with the government's review of the deceased organ donor regime, will bring the change, the increase in organ donation rates that we all want to see. Sir, as I just mentioned before, this bill comes back to the Parliament in a greatly improved form, and I just want to run through for the House the major changes recommended by the committee that I support and that the government supports. So the essential purpose of the bill, sir, remains unchanged. That's to remove a financial deterrent to the donation of organs by live donors. And at Select Committee, sir, we heard many stories of the financial hardship that live organ donors currently have to endure to help another member of society. I was moved by these stories, as I know other members were too, and I'm pleased that we've unanimously agreed that a change to the status quo is required. Sir, in its original form, the bill set compensation for lost earnings at 80% of foregone income, which is the formula applied under ACC. We received many submissions arguing that compensation should instead be set at 100% of lost income, and the committee has agreed with these submissions, sir, and recommended that the new bill adopt a principle of cost neutrality for live organ donors. What that means is that live organ donors will or should be neither financially disadvantaged or financially advantaged from donating, and the committee has recommended we adopt the position of cost neutrality, which is the position in the United Kingdom. The analogy, sir, with ACC is inappropriate for a number of reasons. Organ donors are healthy before they donate and are only temporarily unable to work, I should say, while they recuperate. And there's also no real necessity to maintain that gap between levels of assistance and income from employment to incentivise return to work. Sir, the second change I want to highlight for the House, recommended by the Health Committee, concerns which entity is responsible for administering this legislation. So the committee heard a lot of evidence, sir, about the difficulties live organ donor claimants had when obtaining financial support through Ministry of Social Development, through WINS. This is totally understandable, and I make no criticism of WINS staff in this regard. There are very few claims for live organ donor assistance through MSD currently, so it's totally understandable that frontline staff would be, actually in some cases we heard, even unaware that there is provision in the current law for live organ donor assistance. The committee has recommended that responsibility be transferred from the Ministry of Social Development through to the Director General of the Ministry of Health, and I think that's an appropriate change. In terms of other changes, the committee has recommended, thirdly, to allow for new entitlements to be backdated for eligible donors to the date that the bill receives the royal assent. That's an important change that will mitigate the risk that people intending to donate would defer the procedure until they become eligible. So that's a very important change, sir. It also enables the Director-General of Health to pay income compensation to a donor before surgery in limited circumstances. A fourth change is provision to future-proof the bill to allow, by order in council, a regulation declaring a type of human organ to be a qualifying organ for compensation. So although kidney and liver transplants are the only type of live organ donor transplants carried out in New Zealand, other types of potentially suitable live donor transplants are medically possible and are carried out in other countries, including small bowel, pancreas and lobular lung transplants. So the recommendation of the committee is that we future-proof the bill to allow, by order in council, by way of the minister, to bring those other organs into the regime in the future, if so desired. Fifthly, sir, the committee has recommended amending the title of the bill to compensation for live organ donors to reflect the focus on providing donors with compensation for lost income rather than merely providing financial assistance. And this follows in line with the recommendation of the committee that we adopt a cost neutrality approach and a focus on compensation for foregone income rather than just mere assistance. Sir, I do want to mention the objections raised to the bill in its original form by the Attorney-General under Section 7 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. So upon the bill being introduced, the Attorney adverted the House to the fact that the bill disadvantaged individuals who receive a benefit and also earn income from working. This is because the bill in its original form compensated organ donors for lost work income only if they weren't receiving a benefit. And the argument from the Attorney was that the bill was therefore inconsistent with Section 19(1) of the Bill of Rights Act, which of course prevents discrimination against individuals. So the proposed amendments to the bill, sir, I believe deal with this issue raised by the Attorney. It's actually, sir, I would say a classic example of the Section 7 report working in exactly the way it's intended, which is that the Attorney notifies Parliament that the legal advice is that the bill is inconsistent with the Bill of Rights Act. It goes to a committee and then the error is tidied up and we can move forward in a rights-consistent way. So the amendments to the bill will mean that donors will receive reimbursement for 100% of foregone employment income, regardless of whether or not they are a beneficiary or not. So there is no discrimination. So let me conclude by returning to where I started, which was about the motivation for this bill. New Zealand has a low organ donation rate with a large waiting list, as members will be aware. There are more than 700 people accepted for a kidney transplant currently and around 40 people for liver, cardiac or lung transplants. The facts are, sir, that organ transplants save taxpayers money. Evidence put before the Health Committee from the New Zealand Initiative and Dr Elizabeth Prasad suggested that every kidney transplant saves the government, saves taxpayers over $120,000. So we need to do all we can as a society to encourage live organ donors. Donors substantially improve the lives of those they donate to. They also save, as I said, sir, they save taxpayers money. Sir, it is simply inequitable to effectively punish these national heroes as we do now. It is a sign of a caring, compassionate society that we recognise sacrifice and support each other. This bill does both, and I therefore commend it to the House.